Oh, hello. Welcome to another video. Quite a special video today. It's another in the Faction Rundown series, but I'm finally tackling the Sisters Novitiates. You know, that team that I'm supposed to be a channel that focuses on, because it's a team that I want to do really well with. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's taken me so long to make this video. I love the Sisters of Battle. Okay, my favourite part of the 40k IP. Massive, probably over about 3,000 points of 40k Sisters. When Kill Team first came out, that's what I wanted to play. I wanted to play the Compendium Ecclesiarchy team. As soon as the Novitiates came out, Bespoke Sisters team, I was all over them. You know, it's the team I really wanted to do well with, and I could not do well with them. And then when people started to say, there's even a video on the channel, what's the deal with Novitiates? Because I started to feel really frustrated, because when people say that your team is filthy and broken and needs a nerf and this, that and the other, and you can't win with it, you start to feel like, oh, I can't even win. I can't even win with that team. But finally, over the summer holiday, I've been up, I won 4 games clearly, and then the 5th game I won if you count the +2 VP for painted. My opponent won if not, but either way it was a really tight, really close game that was really enjoyable. So I feel like something has clicked, and I feel like I'm finally in a place to talk a little bit about the Novitiates. So here we go. I'm gonna give you my opinions. So let's start with the basic rundown, as we always do with these videos. So you've got access to security or recon. You know my thoughts on this. In line with the majority, it's not a novel argument, but I think you're going to take security. Okay, it's a 10 model team. Used to call 10 models a horde team. I think 10 models is kind of like the median team, right? Less than 10 is elite, and more than 10 is horde. 10 is kind of standard. So you've got a 10 model team. The superior has weapon options, but not really. So it is the absolute height of Kill Team, not really options. You could take a bolter and a gun butt, or you can take a bolt pistol, a plasma pistol, or a power weapon. More so than any other team, you just take the plasma pistol and the power weapon. Anything else, I can't even begin to consider why you would want to do that. And then you've got 9 other operatives chosen from this list. And the list contains, let's have a look, where's the laser pointer? The list contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But notice that you can take Pegatuses twice. Okay? So really you've got 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the second Pegatus 12. You're choosing 9 out of that 12. You're not taking Novitiate Militants. They're the basic one that you that are included to make the squad playable in 40k, really. So like a lot of bespoke teams, you're just not taking the non-specialists, but you're still going to have to choose 2 of these specialists to leave behind every game. So if you're watching this, as I know some people will be, because you've just got a box of Novitiates and you want to build them, my recommendations are that you don't build the Duelist or the Reliquarius, the Banner Lady, right? Don't build the Duelist or the Banner Lady. I think the Banner Lady has play. I recommend buying a second box so you can have a sideboard, but 9 games out of 10, you'll be fine without the Duelist or the Reliquarius. Okay? While we're on this page, we're going to go through the Inferno Rule. So this is a new critical hit rule that's on the Flamers that the Pegatus carry, as well as it's on the Mace that the Mace Lady, who I think is the Preceptor, carries. So Inferno X. Each time a friendly operative fights in combat or makes a shooting attack with this weapon, in the roll attack dice step of that combat or shooting attack, If you retain any critical hits, the target gains X Inferno tokens. X is the number after the weapon's Inferno, e.g. Inferno 1. At the end of each turn-in point, roll a d6 for each Inferno token enemy operative has. On a 4-up, the enemy operative suffers a mortal wound. After rolling, remove all the Inferno tokens. It's nothing really that you should worry about, because if you shoot somebody and they're left on 1 or 2 wounds and they have 1 or 2 Inferno tokens, you can't rely on those Inferno tokens to finishing them off. So if you can shoot them again to kill them, you should. Okay? Don't be tempted to go, oh well, they'll probably die because they've got Inferno tokens. It's a 50-50. If the Inferno tokens happen to finish them off, and you could otherwise do nothing about it and they would have been left alive on 1 wound, that's gravy, but it's not something that you really need to think about. You know, it's the old, I don't know, anyone played, used to be a rule in War Machine, going back a bit to 2nd edition, things used to catch fire then, right? You'd roll for the fire at the end of the term. But the key thing here is that the fire, it's going out, whatever happens, okay? You're rolling, on a 4 it would take a wound, either way, it just happens one time and then you forget about it. No, never mind. Right, Faith. So, now this is the slide. Oh, I've foolishly put in fact, what I'm going to have to do, there's just so much information. Hopefully this moves on the video, if I move myself over to there, and make myself really small, right now we can see the whole thing. Good, that's good. Right, so Faith. This is going to be a big explainer, isn't it? So, you've probably heard about the Faith mechanic. You've probably heard some not so popular commentary about it. People saying that it's overpowered. It's the reason the team is good. As we're going to look at in a minute, their stats are really weak. They're 7 wounds, which I think is the lowest standard number of wounds for a whole team, with a 4-up save. Faith has a bad reputation because, like, if you've played Magic the Gathering, for example, if you're played against a blue control deck in Magic, Faith has a lot of moments where you're saying to your opponents, no, you can't do that. And that hurts. But I think, to be perfectly honest, in a world where there's also teams like Harlequin Troop that can't be shot when you're outside of red, there's teams with invulnerable saves, there's teams like Custodes with loads of wounds and a high armor save. There's lots of examples of things stopping you from doing something that you thought you were going to do. It's just that Faith does it in a particularly... Faith does it in a strange manner which some people find to be slightly obnoxious, okay? Because you're interrupting the established flow. If you shoot me with something and then I pass my absurdly high armor save, or if you try and shoot me with something and you can't because of a rule I can point to, that's different for you rolling the dice, seeing the dice, and then me spending points to change the dice around. It feels different. Mechanically, I don't think they're powerful. They're a top-tier team. Mechanically, I don't think they're, like, in this absurd place of being absurdly overpowered. And so while when you're playing against them, I think you feel... maybe feel a little hard done to. Please try and bear that in mind. You know, compare them with other top-tier teams like Harlequin Troop. I also would say to the Novitiate players, don't fall into the mistake that's perhaps the mistake that I fell into when I started playing this team. If you listen to people, you know, out there in the community who are telling you over and over again, oh, these are really overpowered, you basically can't die, this, that, and the other, you'll play reckless, you'll play lazy, you'll play reckless, you'll put your models there and you'll think, oh, well, Faith will save me. You still have to be a good player to be a good player. Right, and then the Faith will help you stay alive. It redresses what you haven't got from your poor wound stat and poor armor save stat. It doesn't enable you to play like a Mong. Okay, you have to still have the fundamentals of the game down, and that, I think, is number one what I was doing wrong. I wasn't worrying too hard about the fundamentals of positioning because I got Faith points and they'll keep me alive, and yeah, they will, and then they run out because you can only have so many models that are exposed and relying on Faith to keep them alive, right? So we're going to go through all the rules in a minute, don't worry, we are. We're going to go on to Blinding Aura, which is a particular irritation, okay? And just to flag up as well, Faith requires more thinking time. After nearly every dice roll that you do, you're thinking, am I going to spend faith points to re-roll dice? Now, to an extent, that's always a thing in this game, because you can always spend a command point to do a reroll, but it's a command point to do a reroll. With Faith, as we'll see, there's multiple different things that you can do, and they play with each other in interesting ways. Okay? So your opponent can sometimes find the sort of moments where if they're not used to playing against Novitiates, you can roll some dice, and your opponent might see your poor defense dice and go, I've definitely killed that model, let's take it off and move on. And you're sort of standing there staring at the dice. And if you got really, really unlucky, they're going to be like, all right, he's dead, and trying to move on with their turn. And you have to be like, no, hang on a minute. I'm working out if I can actually afford to keep this model alive. I want to spend the resources if I can. If I change this, what's your damage threshold? If I change this one, what's going to happen? That can slow the game down a little bit, which again is another reason that people get a bit kind of aggy on the faith stuff. Right, let's look at the rules for the people that aren't familiar. So you have an extra resource, like alongside your command points, you have another resource called faith points. So you keep a pool of faith points. At the start of each turning point, if there are friendly Novitiate operatives in the kill zone, you gain 3 faith points. So you're getting 3 faith points every single turn, right? Which is loads. It's great. In addition, you gain a faith point at the end of an activation if any of the following apply. Ignore all of this section here, right? I'll tell you for why. So I'm going to get my highlighter here just to make it really clear. This section here, in addition, you gain 1 faith point at the end of an activation if any of the following apply. During that activation, a friendly Novitiate operative with the combat specialism incapacitates an enemy operative in combat. During that activation, a friendly Novitiate operative with a marksman specialization incapacitates an enemy operative with a shooting attack. During that activation, a friendly operative with the staunch specialism performs a mission action. A friendly operative with the scout specialism was activated and ends within red of the enemy drop zone. If we're going to ignore all of this. This is poor rules writing from Games Workshop, because these are narrative-only rules. We get that now from the designer's FAQ here. Question: for the purposes of generating faith points, when does an operative have a specialism? In narrative play, the first time it gains a battle honour and you select the specialism for its progress in. Right? If you are the median kill team player, you're not playing narrative play, so don't get derailed by these rules. You're getting 3 faith points a turn base. You're not getting any extras from this. Faith points can be subtracted so that friendly Novitiate operatives can perform an act of faith from this list here. Each act of faith will specify when it can be used, its effect, how many faith points you must subtract. If you cannot subtract the required faith points, you can't use the act of faith. Unless otherwise specified, only 1 act of faith can be used during each activation. Right? So you use it once per. You can spam them across the turning point as much as you like, but in any given activation, unless otherwise specified, you can only use it once. So if a shooting attack is made, in the roll defense dice step of the shooting attack, the operative's controlling player decides to subtract 2 faith points to use Divine Shield to retain 1 failed save as a successful normal save. No other acts of faith can then be performed during that activation other than Faithful Blessing. Right? Does that make sense? During that activation of that enemy's model where they're shooting you. Okay? So, we're going to look through each of them. I'm going to go back to my laser pointer. We're going to look through each of the acts of faith. So, Faithful Blessing costs you 1 faith point. Faithful Blessing. When a friendly Novitiate operative fights in combat or makes a shooting attack, in the roll attack dice or roll defense dice step of that combat or shooting attack, re-roll 1 of your attack or defense dice. This act of faith can be used more than once in each activation and can be used with other acts of faith. So what this means is you've got a command re-roll spending your faith point. You're getting 3 faith points a turn. You're getting 1 command point a turn. So you're going to use a faith point when you want to do a command re-roll. In addition, you can do as many of these as you like for 1 dice roll. You could potentially re-roll every dice in the roll. Remember that you can never re-roll a re-roll. That's the core rule, right? So you roll your dice. Let's say you roll your, let's say that you roll your defense dice and you get a 4, a 3, and a 2. And to live, you need to change one of these 3s or 2s to a pass. So you'd be in a position here where you could spend 1 faith point to re-roll, you know, and you've got a 50-50 chance of getting it. Your other option, if I was just to skip around for a minute, your other option is down here, Divine Shield. So we're just jumping down to Divine Shield for the minute. Divine Shield, when a shooting attack is made against a friendly Novitiate operative, in the roll defense dice step of that shooting attack, retain one of your failed saves as a successful normal save. 2 faith points, right? So it depends what you need to do. You could spend 1 to re-roll. Then you could spend 1 to re-roll the other dice. Then, having re-rolled them both, if they both failed, you could then spend 2 to turn 1 into a pass. But you couldn't spend 2 again to turn the other one into a pass, because you could only use the Divine Shield once. Does that make sense? Yeah? So, you've got to start thinking about, how much damage have I got coming in? I've only got 7 wounds. How much do I need to block to survive? I can only re-roll each dice once. Got to keep track of which amount re-rolled and non-re-rolled dice. It could be often, if I needed to pass all 3 of these, I'd spend for the re-roll first. If that one failed, right, then I'd be asking myself, okay, do I spend for a second re-roll, and then if that passes, spend 2 points to turn this fail that's re-rolled back into a fail into a pass? Or do I cut my losses? You can then spend the second faith point to re-roll the other non-re-rolled dice. If that then passes, you can spend the final 2 to get that one into a pass. If the second re-roll fails, you don't need to spend a 2. You know the model is dead and you can't save it. So it's thinking about things that way to manage your to manage your points. Okay. Right. So a lot of these have to do with manipulating dice. So there's Guiding Light, which is when you make a shooting attack, you can retain a failed hit as a successful hit, 2 points. Vengeful Strike, when you make a combat or shooting attack, you can retain a successful normal hit as a crit. Divine Shield we've just gone through, and then notice Armour of Contempt is the same idea. It's turning a normal into a critical. Notice that Armour of Contempt only costs 2 faith points. So when you're attacking, changing a hit into a crit costs 3. But when you're defending, changing a normal into a crit is 2, which is the same price as changing a fail into a normal. But notice that you can't do both. Yeah? You can chain them with Faithful Blessing, but you can't use multiples in the same... You can't use multiples in the same activation, right? Does that make sense? And so that means then, and I've probably misplayed this a couple of times, if somebody has Bolter Discipline and they shoot you with your bolter and you use, Armour of Contempt, you've then used your Armour of Contempt. You've used the only other faith you can use in that whole activation is Faithful Blessing. Even for their second shooting action, because it's a second action in the same activation. Right? Once you're in another activation, you can fill your boots. But you can't use, apart from the reroll, apart from Faithful Blessing, you can't use these multiple times in the same activation. Okay? Now, these bottom 3 are more interesting, right? So, Emperor's Protection. Spend a faith point, ignore a mortal wound. This act of faith can be used more than once in each activation. Okay? So, if you are shot and there's mortal wounds, you can spam this faith point to buy off the mortal wounds. But notice, and I'm sure I've misplayed this as well, and I apologise to my opponents. Notice... If you've used Emperor's Protection 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, doesn't matter, you can't then use Divine Shield or Armour of Contempt. You can use Faithful Blessing, But only Faithful Blessing contains the clause that it can be used more than once in each activation. So if someone shot you and they've done like 5 damage plus 2 mortal wounds, yes, you can spend points to not have the mortal wounds. Yes, you can spend points to try and not take the 5 damage, but you may not do both. Okay? Blessed Rejuvenation. So when you're activated, in your activation, you regain D3 lost wounds, and you can use it twice in an activation, right? So you can just activate, give yourself D3 lost wounds back for 2 faith points, and you can do that a second time. That's very cool, very useful. Again, remember, if you've done that, and then you shoot somebody, you then can't use these things when you've shot somebody. Alright? Okay. Now the contentious one, the annoying one, the favourite of Novitiate players, and the least favourite of non-Novitiate players, Blinding Aura. 2 faith points. When an enemy operative performs a shooting attack, select one friendly Novitiate operative. Until the end of that activation, while that friendly operative is more than white from the enemy operative, that friendly operative is treated as being in cover. So if you are on a conceal, you spend 2 faith points to do Blinding Aura, you cannot be shot. Okay? You cannot be shot if you're on a conceal. Now, there's a lot of Q&A about Blinding Aura. So let's just go through this for a second. Right, Blinding Aura. Change the final sentence to read: until the end of the activation, while that friendly operative is more than circled from an enemy operative, that friendly operative is treated as being in cover. While that friendly operative has a conceal order, it is always treated as having a conceal order, regardless of any other rules, e.g. vantage point. That was always what I remember, just to hammer home. Even if you're on a vantage, it's a conceal order, you're in cover, you're concealed and in cover, you're not being shot. You're not being shot. Question. When specifically during a shooting attack should the Blinding Aura Act of Faith be used? When a Novitiate operative is selected as a target. Okay? So you don't have to, as was thought at one point from the text, the enemy operative goes, I'm performing a shooting attack, and then you have to pop your Blinding Aura, and then they announce who they're shooting. No. They select once they've said, I'm shooting him, you then say, okay, well, they're going to Blinding Aura. Okay? That could mean they're no longer a valid target, at which point your opponent must select a different valid target. Okay? Must select a different valid target. My understanding is, from the core rules, if they cannot select another valid target, their action point is refunded and they do something else. But if there's someone else that they can shoot, they've committed to shooting, so they must shoot that other person. Blinding Aura Act of Faith lasts till the end of the activation. How long does it last when you're using an Overwatch action until the end of that Overwatch action? That's pretty obvious. If an enemy operative makes a shooting attack with an indirect weapon and I use Blinding Aura Act of Faith, which takes precedence, indirect. So it cannot save you from grenades. Okay? So it can save you from vantage, can't save you from grenades. If an enemy operative makes a shooting attack with a barrage weapon, and I use Blinding Aura, which takes precedence, Blinding Aura. So it saves you from barrage, doesn't save you from indirect. Saves you from barrage, saves you from vantage, doesn't save you from indirect. Okay? Blinding Aura is like the bread and butter of how you keep your models alive. Yeah? It is 2 faith points. You're only getting 3 a turn. Hopefully, if things are going well for you, you're getting 6 a turn. That's still not that many Blinding Auras, right? Considering how fast you're going to use them re-rolling dice and doing other things. Just going to go back and cover this FAQ because I forgot to read it out. Acts of Faith, Faithful Blessing, so this is the re-roll one. Change the relevant part of the sentence to read, when a friendly Novitiate operative is fighting in combat, making a shooting attack, or a shooting attack is being made against it, in the roll attack dice step for the former, or the roll of defense dice step for the latter of that combat or shooting attack. That's one of those FAQs where you read it and you can't work out what people were trying to do, because that just has more words to explain what I think it's very obvious that this says. I'm sure there's a story there where people were trying to do something. Alright? So that's faith. You've got a whole extra pool of points. you're managing them, you can do these things, you can spam rerolls and combine them with other things. You can't combine any of the other things with each other. You can spam buying off mortal wounds, and you can play twice Blessed Rejuvenation. Blinding Aura is as powerful as the Novitiates player thinks it is, and I'm afraid you can't shoot that model, is generally the case, okay? Alright. Let's go through the unit cards one by one. We're going to start with the militants. We're never going to take the militants, okay? Sometimes I've heard of people taking a militant with an auto gun so that they have a ranged weapon option for that one tack up in Recon where you have to shoot people at range. My advice here is just not to take the Recon deck. The Novitiate Blade's not that bad, but we already aren't probably taking the Duelist, who has a better version of the Novitiate Blade. But 4-5 damage, 4 dice, 3 to hit isn't bad, okay? Right, let's look at the stat block, because it's going to be the basis for all of our things. So really standard stat block. Mover 3 circle, APL 2, GA 1, Def 3. We got a 4-up save and 7 wounds. That's what we're working with. They're going to die in a stiff breeze, right? If it wasn't for Faith, it would be an unplayable team, because a 4-up save is nothing. And 7 wounds means... I mean, against elite teams, you're being one hit in combat a lot of the time by a crit, right? Which is funny. So it's a really low number of wounds. Let's look at the first specialist, the Superior. So this is the leader. So as usual, we're getting the wounds bump up to 8. You're also getting a save bump because the model is in power armor. Okay. The Superior is easily your most powerful operative. Okay. There is a ploy, not a plot, a ploy. Let's fix that in post. Okay. A ploy. There we go. Doesn't even look like a Y. Why do I bother? You have a ploy to buy off the range limitation of the plasma pistol. Okay, so now what you've got is a BS2 plasma gun. As long as you're spending a CP to turn it on to make it have full range. A BS2 plasma gun's really good. Whatever way you slice it, no one else can have a BS2 plasma gun. Right? You can. Good. You can be a bit more reckless with your Novitiate Superior because you have a 3-up save. And you might be thinking, but Phil, it's only 1 point of save difference. But remember that you have access to rerolls. I do not generally want to bother unless... Oh, let me move my face out of the way here. Right? I genuinely do not want to bother a lot of the time re-rolling a failed save on a Novitiate. Unless I am really desperate for that Novitiate to live, I'm not going to re-roll a failed 4-up save with a resource because it's going to fail. Whereas with a 3-up save, the odds are it's going to pass. So if I failed it, I re-roll it, I'm probably going to pass. I have to be unlucky to roll 2 fails in a row. Yeah? So therefore the 3-up save means you can be a little bit more reckless. You can be on engage with this model more often, which is good because you want to be on engage when you've got a plasma gun. You've also got a really powerful ability here, Lead by Example. Sometimes I opt not to use Lead by Example because it doesn't always come up, but Lead by... Where's my laser gone? Come on. Lead by Example. Each time the operative is activated, if it performs a mission action, or any enemy operatives are incapacitated as a result of any actions it performs during its activation, you can then select a ready friendly novitiate, visible and within red, and you can chain activate. Which sometimes is something you really want to do. It's not something I tend to build around. Maybe I should. I'm not a very good player. I don't tend to be thinking, oh yes, I'll do this, and I get the lead by example. But when I kill someone with the Superior, I just whip out the little stick and I check, do I want to do lead by example? You don't always want to do a chain activation. It's not always a buff, but sometimes it is. Depends on the board state. But you don't want to hand your opponent an extra Overwatch, right? Right, the Penitent and the Exactor. So I've put these on the same page because they are used together. Let's look at the Exactor first. So we got the standard stat block. Neural Whips. Same stat line. She's got a ranged profile and a combat profile. There's no point charging into combat with the Exactor. Right? Because that just means she's going to get hurt and probably die. Just move up, get within range red and see. It's you know, you're throwing 5 dice, which is good. You're hitting on 3s, which is... yeah, good. 2-3 damage, lethal 5-ups. You're going to get a few more 3s than 2s, hopefully. And you've got stuns. You can get them down to an APL, reduce their ability to react. It's not a good combat piece. It usually ends up going up into combat after the first turn when this Penitent is charged off into the middle distance. Okay, so what she's got is this ability here, Whip into Frenzy. For 1 action point, you select 1 friendly Novitiate operative, excluding the superior, so you can't do this to your boss. Within blue and visible to the operative, add 1 to the operative's APL. In addition, if it's a Novitiate Penitent operative, until the end of the operative's next activation, add Circle to its movement characteristic. Okay, so you can give the Penitent Force Circle, which is really good. If you want to be really cheesy, I've never done this, really cheesy, really beardy, or just playing optimally, however you want to describe it. You can actually give her +2 circles of movement, because the way this is worded, add 1 to the operative's APL. In addition, if that operative is an Novitiate Penitent operative, until the end of its next activation, add Circle to its movement characteristics. So let's say you activate the Penitent. You know, and you just pass or stand around, whatever you do. You activate the Penitent, then you activate the Exactor, and you whip the Penitent. Penitent's now got +1 APL and +1 circle movement. Then you go into turning point 2, you activate the Exactor, you whip the Penitent again. The Penitent now gains +1 circle movement and +1 APL. Now, it doesn't get +2 APL because there's a core rule that says that you can never get more than +1 APL. But in theory, you could give her +2 circles of movement. So now, she's got a movement of 5 circle, right? A charge of 6 circle, which is powerful. I've never done it. A, because I would feel bad. Maybe if I was in a tournament setting and it was absolutely cutthroat and it was really going to serve me well, I might do it. If I was playing against Zimbad and it was really going to serve me well, I might do it because he's a much better player than me. But generally speaking, I value the ability to move her and use her on turn 1, because what I think is really valuable in this team, and how I end up using the Penitent engine more often than not, is I'll take her with her extra circle of movement and with her 3rd APL, and I'll get up onto a midfield objective that I wouldn't be able to get to otherwise. Yeah, you'll often see me doing the pre-game dash sometimes with the Penitent, right? Pre-game dash, and then a 4 circle move and a dash, and then a 3rd APL to activate an objective. Quite often the play with the Penitent. She's on conceal this whole time. The enemy turns around, tries to shoot her, you just do blinding light, right? That's usually how I use it. And then in the second turning point, you're following up with the Whip Lady, you follow it with someone else to get onto that objective, and the Penitent can go off and do whatever she wants to do. She is a powerful combat piece. I mean, look at this. When my laser pointer actually appears and obeys me. There we go. Look at this. 5-6 damage, brutal. So brutal is you're only going to parry with your own crits. Okay. 5-6 damage is really good. You are hitting on 4s. Sad. But look, Zealous Rage. The first time this operative performs a fight action in each of its activations in the roll attack dice step of that combat, reroll any or all of your attack dice. So for free, without spending any faith points, you're getting your rerolls. You're probably going to get a fair old number of hits. Okay. Reap 2. I tend to be playing against a lot of Marines at the moment. You know, I went up north and I played against Phobos. I played against a Warp Coven player who doesn't own any Sangors. I played against Mrs. TI's Chaos Legionaries. I did play against Mechanicum as well, the White Dwarf Mechanicum team. Hunterclade, that's the one. So that was a big team. But generally speaking, I was playing against Marines. And then the last couple of games I had against Paul, Zimbad. Oh, I've just doxed Zimbad. There we go. The last couple of games playing against Zimbad, he has been using his Grey Knights. You know, he recently got that Grey Knight win against the Grey Knight that he podiumed with Grey Knights. He came 3rd at Warhammer World. So he's been playing a lot with those. He's working on Phobos, so I think he's going to pivot into Phobos. So I just don't often find myself playing into. It's why I'm so scared of them. I think Vet Guard, Tau, those kinds of things. If you can get a multiple charge where you charge into 2 people, she's really good because you can charge, fight, you get the reap to stack damage on the other guy, and then you've got this other action. Instead of doing a fight action, you can do absolution through destruction, 1 AP, before a fight action with the operative, and then perform another fight action. and it clarified in the FAQ, it clarified in the FAQ, change the action to read, perform a free fight action with this operative after completing the action's fight sequence. If the operative is still within engagement range of an enemy operative, you can immediately fight in combat with this operative again. For the second combat, you do not have to select the same target, and the Zealous Rage ability has no effect, which I thought was very clear. Somebody obviously didn't think it was clear, so there's the answer. I usually give her the crack grenade. You're going to have, in this post-Balanced Data Slate 2 world, you're going to have one crack grenade in your team. I usually give it to the Novitiate Pennant because she's going to be up the field, propelled forwards that first turn going after an objective. Second turn, if there's nobody in charge range of her because they've all kind of been cagey and stayed more than 4 circle away, at least maybe you can do a move and then throw the grenade and maybe get somebody that way. Or, if your whip is able to catch up, you can give yourself your extra APL, allow yourself to throw the grenade and then charge and fight. Okay? Pegasus, you can take 2 and you probably should. An argument for taking only 1 because you're only burning Wrath once per turning point, right? Because it's a ploy. So we'll talk about this in a minute. But these are good. I like the redundancy of having 2. With Burning Wrath, these are your second best killers, right? Look at this. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Without it, it's still better than your bog standard Flamer, right? Because look. It's 2-3 damage. And it's got the Inferno. We talked about at the start. It's got Inferno 1, but it's got 2-3. If you spend a command point, 3-4. And then Inferno 2 as well, right? 3-4, 5 dice hitting on 2s. That's quite a lot of damage. 2, 3, 5 dice hitting on 2s is still quite a lot of damage, but 3, 4, 5 dice hitting on 2s is quite a lot of damage. Okay? You've got the same ability as the Daka Boy, Burning Advance, so for 1 AP you can dash and then shoot for 1 AP. It's good. They did clarify you can only use a Flamer for the action shooting attack. Same nerf the Daka Boy got, because people were giving her grenades and doing a dash and throwing a grenade because the shoot action. They want you obviously to be shooting with your gun that's on the card. So, yeah, the Flamer. I really like them. I tend to put them on opposing flanks, send them up, try and kill a high-value target with them, and then kind of assume that they're going to die later on, preferably on an objective to score some points, victory points. We'll talk about that later. But I tend to send them up on the flanks and try and kill some high-value target with the enemy, gunner or something like that. Because they have to get close. They've got no wounds and save as discussed, but they've got a really powerful gun. By the way, in the world where Into the Dark's coming out soon, I think these are going to be nails in Into the Dark because there's just going to be more. Even if I used to think that there was going to be some kind of native buff for Torrent in Into the Dark, just because there is in Horus Heresy Zone Mortalis, but actually even if they don't do anything rules-wise to improve Flamers and Torrent weapons, the fact that the way the terrain now looks for Into the Dark, it seems more likely to me that you're actually going to be able to use torrents, that you're going to have more corridors with people lined up in the corridor to be torrented at. Because the thing is, I love this gun. It doesn't feel like a flamethrower because you never really get torrent. Again, I'm playing a lot of elite teams. It feels like a sort of pseudo melter gun where you're running up, you're just really hurting one target. If you can get torrent, I mean, it's happy days. If you get up on a team that's clustered and you torrent them, it's happy days. But I find that people aren't clustering up, right? People cluster up in their deployment zones, but by the time you've got your Pegasus halfway up the board to get into within range red, people aren't clustering up. Okay? But even without the torrent, it will be a cracking gun, especially when you buy up this bonus for it. Right, the Prenatus, which everybody just calls Cup Lady. Cup Lady spends the entire game on conceal, generating faith points because you're going to put a barricade on an objective that's the one nearest your deployment zone. You're going to sit behind the barricade on a conceal, generating faith points. If someone somehow gets vantage on you or has vantage of that then you're going to start spending blinding lights to keep her alive. Yeah, I mean, she's a really key piece that you're going to take in every single game. So she has a mission. The big thing here is this raised relic. For 1 action point, you gain 2 faith points. And notice, if you're not on, people forget you can do this. If you're not on let's put myself back down there. If you're not on an objective, you can still have 2 faith points, which is still worth doing a lot of the time, right? But if you're on an objective, you can get 3 faith points. If you're within a circle of the centre of the objective, you can gain 3, or while within red of the enemy drop zone, if you've ended up in the wrong place, you can also gain 3 faith points. So now you're getting 6 faith points a turn, which makes it a lot more comfortable, right? Because now you can actually do more things and not run out of faith points nearly so often. So Cup Lady is incredibly important to your entire game plan. She also has a really good ability here, Relic Seeker, right? So Relic Seeker, when the model is activated, it can perform one mission action at any point during its activation without subtracting any action points. So therefore, you don't have to put yourself in the position of, if it's a game mode where you have to interact with the objective, you don't need to worry about running up to the objective and then going, oh, should I score the VP or generate the faith point? You can do both, because you can move and then you can Relic Seeker to do the mission action for free, and then you can raise your relic to gain your faith points. Very good. In the mission, I forget the name, where you pick up the objectives, you can move out, stand on the objective, raise the relic, unlock it to gain the victory point, right? And then next turn, you can raise your relic again, pick it up, and move back, right? And then in the third turning point, you can drop it on the ground for free, raise the relic, pick it up with Relic Seeker, and then move even further backwards in your deployment zone, which is very funny. Big fan of the Prenatas in that mission as well. Obviously, you want to beware grenades and blasts and things, because you're trying to keep her safe. She's really key. If she dies, I don't want to say it's an automatic loss, because it depends when she dies. If she dies, but if she manages to die in turn 1 or turn 2, then that is a significant problem. If you're in turn 3 or turn 4, well, it depends. Sometimes I feel like my opponents go out of their way to kill the Prenatas, and to a lesser degree the medic, for some reason. They get really annoyed by those two pieces, because they're the ones that are doing a lot of, or fueling a lot of the, no, that doesn't work. No, sorry, that hasn't happened. That they don't go after the flamethrowers and the leader, and then your flamethrowers and leader are running around for days just killing things, which can be quite fun. But by and large, you want to keep your Prenatas alive. Really important key utility piece. Reliquarius. So I often leave the Reliquarius on the bench. She's not bad. She's got this ability, right? Plant icon, 1 action point. Perform this action while within circle of the centre of an objective until this operative is next activated. If it is within circle of the centre of the objective marker, have half the APL of enemy operatives rounding up when determining who controls the objective marker, which is a nice ability. Okay, because you can halve the you can halve their APL when you see who controls the objective, and you're an APL 2 team, so against an APL 3 team, it at least it evens it out, right? It turns them to APL 2 as well, and against another APL 2 team, it means that you're claiming an objective even if they're still on it. I quite like it against legionaries, just because you're going to have to really work, because they've got their Night Lords looking fella that can really, really mess around with objectives. And at least if you're having to send a big mob onto an objective that you really need as well, you can send this with them and it will help you try and get that objective. Icon of Purity can be really funny. So Icon of Purity is her other ability. Each time a friendly Novitiate operative is incapacitated, if it's in red and visible, roll a d6. On a 4, it can immediately perform a free shoot action. This can be really good if somebody finally gets through all your faith and kills your leader, and your leader dies, and then you get a 4-up and you get a free plasma gun shot, right? It's even funnier if your leader dies, you roll a 4-up, you get a free plasma gun shot, and then you resurrect your leader with your medic. I cannot overstate how much of winning with this team just relies upon killing things with that leader, with that plasma gun. But like, it's a 4-up still. So for that's really as funny as that is when it happens, it's got a 50% chance of not happening, and all these abilities that are quite cool, but they only work on a 4-up. It will be a great operative in another team, but I think it's outshone by other operatives because you can't bring all 12. Hospilata is the standard medic. Now, I have this conversation with people when I was up north. People were getting really irritated about the medic. And Zimbad always gets irritated about the medic. And I'm like, well, it's just a medic. It just does the things that all all the normal medics do. Ooh, that's not good. It just does the thing that all the normal medics do, and they were sort of saying to me, well, the guy that plays Warp Coven doesn't, Warp Coven, they have like a medic spell or something like Renate Wounds. The guy that plays Ab Mech doesn't have a medic, but I think most teams have a medic, and most medics are pretty standard. There's nothing special about it. She's not as good as the as medics in other teams that have extra special things. She's very, very bog standard medic. So just to go over the medic things really quickly, I know I almost certainly don't need to. Mantra of Restoration. Once per turning point the first time, a friendly Novitiate operative would be incapacitated while visible to and within blue of the operative and not within engagement range of an enemy operative. If this operative is not within engagement range of an enemy operative, this operative can revive it. That operative is not incapacitated, has 1 wound remaining, and if it would have been incapacitated by a shooting attack, any remaining attack dice are discarded. The other friendly operative can perform a free dash action, but that must finish its move within black of this operative. Subtract 1 from both operatives' APL. Quite often what I will have is I will sit this on conceal, behind barricade or other piece of cover, right on top of my leader, who will be on engage behind the cover, usually on an objective. Usually it's a barricade that I've put down near a home objective, because that leader will take a lot of shots, and obviously you're expending all the faith points to keep her alive. When they finally chew through, you bring them back with the medic, and then you can use the medic to heal up next turn. The medic's also got the 1 AP action to heal up 2d3 lost wounds, again like all of the medics. And like all of the medics, they change the they nerf so that you can't resurrect yourself. Originally, same for the Vet Guard and all the other medics out there. You could resurrect yourself with the resurrect ability. They've steadily FAQ'd that for every single medic. Yeah, medics, they're next to plasma guns. I mean, it's not a new story. It's what Vet Guard have already been doing since time began, and they don't have to work as hard to get a plasma gun. So, yes, you know what this is about. You do that. The Preceptor. The Preceptor's a really solid operative. So the Preceptor has both Combat Punch and buffing ability, right? The Preceptor has... I keep having to move myself around today because I've badly designed the slides. The Preceptor has both Combat Punch and buffing ability, right? So, interesting weapon. Hits off 3s, 5/5. When it crits, it's Inferno 2 and stun. So it's very solid. It's going to do 5 damage, 5... It's going to do 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage, That's really good. But she's also got this unflinching determination. Each time a shooting attack is made against a friendly Novitiate operative in the roll defense dice step of that shooting attack, if the operative is visible to within blue of it, you can reroll 1 of your defense dice, which is really good. I tend to keep her back, right, near to both the leader and the cup lady and the medic in a little gaggle there, to allow me to reroll the defense dice for those shots that are coming in, and then use her as a turning point 3 kind of counter threat for anyone that's coming up towards me. Things that have died, she comes up behind. She comes up behind the Eviscerator lady to keep the pressure on there when she inevitably dies. Okay. Also, this ability, Glorious Hymnal, which is really hard to use. So, Glorious Hymnal, 1 action point until the end of the turning point each time a friendly Novitiate operative fights in combat. In the roll attack dice step of that combat, if it's within red of the operative, you can reroll any or all of your attack dice results of 1 or a 2. You've got 2 AP, so if you're going to charge and fight, you can't buff yourself unless you've been commed. And if there's a fight within red of you, you could buff your friend, or you could charge in and fight and help. So basically, the only time I see a use for this is when you've commed yourself to get a 3rd action point, and then you can Glorious Hymnal, charge and fight with rerolls. That is strong, but it requires a 3rd AP from the comms to do it. Alright? Dialogus, so this is the comms. Comms Plus, you've got this auto broadcaster, which I very rarely use. But effectively, standard comms model, so Stirring Rhetoric is your comms rule, select a novitiate within red and visible, add one to its APL. Yeah, so you spend one of your AP to give someone else an AP, fine. Auto Broadcaster, place a Condemning Sermon token within red of the operative, while an enemy operative is within a circle at the centre of the Condemning Sermon token, worsen the ballistical characteristic of ranged weapons it's equipped with by 1 in the ready operative step of each turning point, remove your Condemning Sermon token. It's not awful, and sometimes if you're stuck, if you don't need to move your Dialogus, and you've done your Stirring Rhetoric, and you're on Conceal, so you're not going to shoot with your auto pistol, then you're going to throw out your auto broadcaster just for something to do, right? And it might help. But often I'm finding that I'm moving and then doing Stirring Rhetoric, so it very rarely comes up sometimes. And even if it does come up, it's not that powerful of an ability, really. Sometimes I consider dropping the Dialogus, but I think that would be a mistake. I think, I dropped the Dialogus for the Reliquarius. And certainly when I freely want to take the Reliquarius, it is the Dialogus that I drop, because I've already got 2 plus APL pieces. So do I need 2? I've got the Whip Lady. But it can make for a really strong turn 1 to have 2 AP3 models in terms of, depending on the scenario, it gives you that advantage that Marine players have of being able to move and dash and then interact with an objective if there's objectives to be interacted with. If you're not playing a mission where you need to interact with the objectives, I quite find myself often using the Dialogus with the sniper that we'll look at in a few moments. To let her kind of move and dash and shoot because she's trying to climb up and get onto some kind of vantage. That's quite often the use for it as well in turn 1. Duelists. The Duelist isn't a bad piece, but I never use it. A powerful and survivable combat operative. So she's got dueling blades, so 4 attacks hitting on 2s, 3, 4s, lethal 5 up, so more likely to crit, and she's got this expert riposte. Each time you fight in combat using your blades in the resolve successful hit step of the combat, each time you parry with a critical hit, also inflict damage equal to the weapon's critical damage characteristic. So when you parry, you can also do damage. You can parry with a crit and also do damage. That's quite good. She lacks the raw punch, though, of the other 2 combat specialists, and the other 2 combat specialists both have utility. The Mace Lady straight away, in that she has the reroll armor saves aura, and the Eviscerator wielding lady in that she can have the extra circle of movement. So the Duelist just brings less to the table in that regard. So despite not being really bad per se, she often ends up on my sideboard. The Condemner, last operative. So the Condemner has a sniper rifle which is silent, and we know silent sniper rifles is a fairly common trope within Kill Team. Now most teams have, or many teams have, access to a silent sniper rifle. They're powerful, especially if you manage to get yourself onto some vantage with light cover on top of the vantage point. Then you're basically just sitting there all game unless they actually get all the way up to you. But we know this from the Imperial Guard sniper. We know this from the Corsair sniper. We know this from the Bloodied sniper. There's lots of snipers already in the game. It's not a new thing. What's interesting, though, is the Condemner Stake Thrower's stat line is kind of swingy. It's 2-3, but then when it crits, it does Mortal Wounds 2 and Piercing 1, so it's effectively like 2-5. So it needs to crit. To be worthwhile, it needs to crit. You need to be doing the 2 Mortal Wounds and the Piercing 1. Fortunately, you are rolling 4 dice, and you have ways of guaranteeing a crit with the Fate points, right? Faith points, rather. And you've got this Righteous Condemnation for 1 CP. Use this tactical ploy. After rolling an attack dice for a shooting attack, you can reroll any or all of the attack dice for that shooting attack. So if you roll and it's gash, you can pay a CP, reroll 2, 3, or even all 4 of the dice, and hopefully get some better dice. And then even though you've rerolled them all, you could still choose to use faith points to turn a normal into a crit, or if you really wanted to, turn a fail into a normal. But if I didn't have the crit, I would be turning the normal into the crit to get the piercing 1 and the mortal wounds 2. Multiple crits are less useful because you've already applied your mortal wounds 2 and you've already applied your piercing 1, but you want to get a crit, right? The Null Rod. The Null Rod's really weird. So she has a Null Rod. Each time an enemy operative is activated, if it's within red of the operative, for that activation the APL characteristic cannot be higher than 2. Each time an enemy operative will perform a psychic action, if it's within red of this operative, 1 additional AP must be subtracted to perform that action. Space Marines generally don't have the numbers that they're kind of running up to your back line. Be good against Harlequins, hypothetically, because they are they are very mobile and APL 3. But honestly, I'm really struggling to find a time when the Null Rod has come into play for me. Okay, but honestly, she doesn't need that. She's very good. Just having a silent sniper is a good thing for a team to have. So it could be a surprise for a Marine player into your back line, but like I say, I wouldn't try and use it, build around it in that particular way. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments if you think that I'm wrong. Equipment. Right, loads of equipment. Some of it's really good and a couple of pieces are awful. Oh gosh, where can I put my face where I'm not obscuring everything? I've not thought this through this time. I'm going to make myself tiny weeny. Tiny weeny fill in the corner. There we go. Right. Not going to do the whole slide in that voice though. So, laser pointer every time. There we go. So, Icon of Faith. 2 equipment points. The operative gains the following ability for the battle. Icon of Faith. Once per battle, the operative can perform 1 act of faith without you needing to subtract faith points. If you're going to want to guarantee a crit, then remember, guaranteeing a crit on an attack dice is the thing that requires 3 faith points, the most expensive thing. So always Icon of Faith on the Condemner. On the Condemner, Bolt Thrower, the Sniper, always the Icon of Faith. I often give one to my Penitent. I'm second guessing that now that I've gone through and made this entire video. Why do I put an Icon of Faith on the Penitent? Answers in the comments. You got the Chaplet Ecclesiastes. When you're operating, roll a d6. On a 6, you get 3 APL. Right, rubbish. It's in the average game, it's never gonna do anything. So that's a waste of time. Surplus, 2 EP. The operative gains the following ability for the battle. This model has a save of 3 up instead of 4 up. You can put it onto Cup Lady if you want. That's not going to be 2 EP wasted. I don't bother, but if I played against more Tau, who make it really, really, really difficult to stay concealed and in cover, I probably would bother with it more. But generally speaking, I never bother. But maybe the 2 EP that I've been putting on my second Icon of Faith on the Penitent, maybe they're better served on the this, I don't know. Frag grenades, I don't rate them, but again, I've not played that many Horde teams. Maybe I would rate them higher if I played against loads of Horde teams. Generally, I leave the frag grenade. Yes, crack grenades are broken. You should take a crack grenade. Everybody likes crack grenades. I tend to give my crack grenade to the Eviscerator because she'll be up the field. And because she doesn't otherwise have a gun, I don't think. So, yeah. But you'll take one. You'll put it somewhere. Thankfully, we can only take 1 now, so you don't have to wrestle with, oh, do I want to just take 3 crack grenades? Auto Chastisers are insane. 1 equipment point. Each time the operative fights in combat or makes a shooting attack, in the roll attack dice step of the combat or shooting attack, you can reroll any or all of your attack dice results of 1, even if any of your rerolled dice also result in a 1, the operative suffers 1 mortal wound. So you put it on your leader. Oh, gosh. You put it on your leader. Your leader's now got a BS2 plasma gun, rerolling 1s. So you're going to shoot on high power. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you shoot on high power and you roll a 1 and you re-roll it with this and you roll it into another 1, you're then taking 4 mortal wounds for your hubris. Not necessarily. Okay? Because of, and this is one of those really cheesy beardy things, because of the way this is worded, or rather because of the way Gets Hot is worded, Gets Hot deals the 3 mortal wounds when the dice of a 1 is retained as a failure. So what you can do is you can reroll your 1 with an Auto Chastiser. If you get another one, you can pay faith points to then just pay 2 faith points to turn that one into a hit, which means you don't take the 3 mortals from Get Top. You do take the 1 mortal from the Auto Chastiser though, for going that way around, but it's very unlikely to reroll a 1 into a 1. I also like this on both my flamethrowers, just because they're also hitting on 2s, right? And again, if you can reroll 1s for free, for 1 equipment point as well. Like, people go on about Faith being really busted. Actually, that, for my money, that is the most busted thing that Novitiates have. It's absurd. Right? People go on about Faith, and it's not. It's the BS2 Plasma Pistol with the Auto Chastiser, and the Faith helps. Like, but that's the bit that upsets people. But actually, it's that kind of just insane reliability that I think is what makes them really very good. Sainted Reliquary, 2 EP. Each time the operative strikes with a critical hit, you gain a faith point. I don't usually take this, but I think I've talked myself into putting it on the Condemner instead of the second icon of faith on the Eviscerator, because you always want to be paying to have a crit if you don't have one already on the Condemner, and it's just going to give you a pretty steady extra income of faith points. And if you are spending faith points, it means you get 1 refunded, although do note that doesn't mean that you can change a hit into a crit for 2 faith points. You've got to have the 3 faith points to spend, and then you get 1 back. So don't accidentally cheat. Okay? Ploys! Strategic Ploys, Eyes of the Emperor. For 1 command point. Until the end of the turning point, remove the range special rule from auto pistols, bolt pistols, and plasma pistols that the friendly Novitiate operatives are equipped with. I am just kind of coming around to the idea that, let's make myself a little bit larger. I'm just coming around to the idea that you just want to use Eyes of the Emperor every single round so that you have a plasma gun. Right, obviously if you're going to have your leader on conceal that turn, then you don't use it that turn. So maybe you don't use it turn 1, depends how you feel about things. But you're going to use this most turns. It's your bolt of discipline, it's your thing that you want to make your team work. It also makes all your auto pistols into auto guns for whatever that's worth, right? Sanctified Rounds, 1 command point. Makes your auto guns and auto pistols into bolters effectively by putting them +1 damage on both of them. It's fine, but all of your models that have auto pistols have got something better to do with their command points most of the time, with their action points most of the time. So it's generally not worth spending the command point on, because if I've just said that you're spending 1 on Eyes of the Emperor most round, then you've only got 2 more command points for the whole game to play with, right? So Sanctified Rounds is not worthwhile unless you find yourself in a position late game, where your leader's dead and you've got 1 or 2 models left and you're just trying to play out to do the best you can. And then maybe, it's something you can do to turn, we've all had those games where you've got your medic and your comms left at the end and you're running around trying to do stuff like, okay, I'll turn this into a bolt pistol, I'll try and kill this guy. Why not? But if it's going well, you're not going to use Sanctified Rounds. What else have we got? Right. Defenders of the... Aegis of the Emperor. I nearly forgot it because it's so forgettable. Aegis of the Emperor for 1 command point. Until the end of the turning point, each time an enemy operative within red of a friendly Novitiate operative performs a psychic action, they suffer a mortal wound. Big whoop. It's really very pointless. Really very pointless. Even against Grey Knights or Thousand Suns, people with lots of psychic powers all the time, they're going to take their 1 mortal wound and go, okay, and then carry on casting their psychic power like it's neither here nor there. I would never bother with this. Oh, Defenders of the Faith is... People who are much better at this than me can use almost like a feat turn in War Machine. I played that game where you do the thing and then it's pivotal and it turns the whole game, and they go on and on about Defenders of the Faith. Defenders of the Faith is really hard to pull off. Defenders of the Faith, at the start of the firefight phase, 1 friendly Novitiate operative within a circle of the centre of each objective marker can perform a free shoot action on an engage or a free fight action on an engage. Costs 2 CP. So you're going to need to have ended your turn on an engage. Yeah, You're going to need to have ended your turn on engage. You're going to be able to, you're going to have to see someone that you can shoot at the start of your turn, but you can potentially get an extra plasma gun shot, right? So you often will see me trying to position my leader on an engage onto an objective with a concealed medic nearby, you know, so I am sticking her out there, trying to see if it's worth doing the 2 CP Defenders of the Faith thing to get the extra plasma shot, because you can still shoot then later on in the turning point. Usually you won't have an enemy model that's standing out in the open at the start of the turn for you to just shoot at. Maybe you do. Often your opponent knowing you have Defenders of the Faith can be more useful than actually using it. I find it really hard. It can, like I say, absolutely be a thing that you can do and win, but I think it's a very kind of stars have to align perfect moment thing. I've used it in about 1 in 5 or 6 games, I would say. I have heard that very skilled players basically play into Defenders of the Faith and they set it up and they execute it, and that's what wins in the game, but I am not on that level yet. Over on the tactical ploys, we've already covered Burning Wrath and Righteous Condemnation, and the video is now, oops, the video's trying to finish itself. The video is now over an hour long, so we're just quickly going to talk Glorious Martyrdom. Use this tactical ploy when a friendly division operative is incapacitated. Each enemy operative within circle and visible to that operative suffers 1 mortal wound, and you gain D3 faith points. If you find yourself CP rich and faith points poor, then when someone dies, you can decide to do this. Why not? The 1 mortal wound is neither here nor there, although the situation where you lose a combat and the other guy is on 1 wound, mythical, but it has happened to me once or twice, and then you both die, and that's always fun. Okay? Tac Ops! Very quickly. Purge with Flame. You reveal this attack up in the target reveal step of any turning point. If 2 or more enemy operatives are incapacitated by attacks made by weapons with the Inferno X special rule, so your flamers, 2 flamers, and the mace on the mace lady, and that's it for this one. If you manage to kill 2 or more enemy operatives with specifically them, you score a VP. If you manage to kill the leader with specifically them, you get the 2nd VP. For my money, very hard, even especially that 2nd victory point. You're going to really struggle to score that, so I never take this one. Reconsecrate Ground. Reveal this attack operating target reveal step at the first turning point. Select 1 objective marker not within ready or drop zone. At the end of the turning point, if friendly operatives control the marker, you score a point. If you do it again in another turn, you score a 2nd point. Brilliant. Just what you want. Take it. Designate. Forget about it. You're getting more victory points for doing what you already wanted to do for the primary. Fine. Good. Excellent. Glory to the Martyrs. Reveal this attack op when a friendly operative is incapacitated while within circle of the centre of the objective marker. If another friendly operative is incapacitated within circle of the centre of the objective marker, you score 1 VP. If you achieve the first condition in a subsequent turning point, you score 1 VP. So to be very clear, you've got to have 3 of your models die on objectives. The first 2 can die in the same turning point. The 3rd one has to die in a subsequent turning point. It's a really easy one to score, and it's great in casual play. The problem with it can come if you're winning, like a lot, and dominating, your opponent might not actually kill enough of your models for you to score the 2nd point. And so if you're playing at a tournament setting that uses the same format that Warhammer World does, where you really want to max out your secondaries, because that's going to be the tie break, then this is something that you might want to think about. But on balance, there's enough things that you want to remove from the deck, like Protect Assets or Plant Signal Beacon, that you're probably going to put Glory to the Martyrs in the deck, because it's not that bad, but you might not pick it when it comes up, depending on how your shuffle goes. Okay? And we're done. So please do feel free to let me know down in the comments, what have I got wrong, what have I missed. I don't pretend to be a massive expert on the team. Hopefully I've not made myself look too incredibly foolish. Let me know about your experience of playing as Novitiates or into Novitiates, because obviously there's that little social nugget around them where people find them kind of a bit irritating to play against, and I'd like to explore that with people. Obviously I don't want people to be irritated when I play them, but I also don't want to stop playing them and play a different team because I really like Sisters of Battle, so it's difficult, isn't it? I'm going to be back playing them for a while after my little winning streak up north. I need to see how I can actually beat Zimbad. I need to get him to come around and play a game or go around to his at some point in the summer and see how we go. And can I make a plea for subscribers, please? If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you've enjoyed this video, especially this video has been over an hour in length, you know, longer than a lot of my other videos that are just covering. It's quite easy to do a video when you are covering the news, or if you're just making it a quick little point. Doing a deep dive like this does actually take it out of me a little bit, so it'd be really, really helpful. The best way to help a small channel like mine is to subscribe if you haven't already. If we get to 1,000 subscribers, that'd be great. If other ways to support, if you click under the comments, there's an Aliphet link for Element Games. If you are buying anything anyway, Element Games is a really, really good shop in Stockport in the UK, and I will get 5% back of whatever you spend through that link, so that's quite nice as well. Please do join the Discord if you haven't already. It's really quite getting there now as a Discord server. It's reasonably active most days, so that's really good as well. And you can find my Instagram and my Twitter, where you can just see pictures of my painted models. Not many people on Instagram and Twitter. I don't post much on there, but it is just stuff that I've painted. So if you like looking at painted pictures and you don't get enough of that on Reddit, then you can go and look there as well. All right, thanks, folks. Hope you have a great rest of your day, whatever it is that you might be doing. Bye-bye-bye.